If you don't like swearing, you may not be charmed by this episode of Bewitched Banter. You have been warned, content is not suitable for all listeners. Welcome! You're listening to Bewitched Banter.
I'm Krista, and I believe that people are inherently shitty.
And I'm Amy, and I tend to believe that people are naturally good.
But ironically, I'm a super believer in the supernatural and all things spiritual.
And I'm a total skeptic.
We're best friends, and in this podcast, we're seeking to explore and understand each other's perspectives, with deep dives into the spooky, the spiritual, the magical, and the mystical.
And some straight up spoofs.
Today, we will be covering history of New Orleans Voodoo and Haitian Vodou.
Awesome! Cheers to that!
Cheers! Before I dive into the history of voodoo, though, I wanted to give a little shout out to someone in the fam who is also a listener. More of a mea culpa than a shout out. Miss Robin, I'm so sorry for the F-bombs we drop on this show. And I'm going to do my darndest to be conscious of them.
So this is my mother-in-law.
Yes, Ames's mother-in-law is a fan. Thank you for listening, first and foremost. And again, we are deeply sorry.
It just spills out of our mouths sometimes. We can't control it.
Just
mostly Krista, though.
Mostly me. I will take that ownership. Abso-freaking-lutely. And the other housekeeping item I wanted to say is to my friend Jerry out there. We would love to hear from you regarding a topic. So shoot us an email at bewitchedbanter@gmail.com.
Yes, and he's a Patreon member. So if you want to join our Patreon, you're more than welcome to suggest a topic to us. And if you enjoy the show, since we are relatively new, if you could do us like a huge favor and leave us a review, it just helps us. The more reviews we get, the more our name gets out, and it helps us keep doing what we're doing. Because obviously, we put a lot of work into this thing, and we'd love for people to listen. And
Heart and
we
soul.
appreciate, obviously, thank you so much for listening.
Absolutely.
It means the world to us. We just had our 10th episode.
Yes!
Right? Feels like a big milestone.
Huge. I mean, thank you all for even coming back, because it's been a wild ride, and we're just so happy to be on it together, and especially with all y'all.
Yes. Learning so much. Learned about things I never thought I would in a million years, like topics, audio editing.
Amy's the savant, but yes, of that. I take no credit on the audio.
Well, thank you. But yeah, it's been fun, and we appreciate everyone along for the ride, and we got some cool things we've got planned. But yeah, so we're going to switch it up, see how this goes, but we're going to try to do like history as a section, and then we're going to have another episode on Thursday where we focus more on our stories.
Yeah.
So I guess you can listen to both, or if you're more a history person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like our stories always kind of revolve around history regardless.
They do. But if you're history buff like our resident historian, Amy's hubby, Corey, you can now have an episode dedicated to just that topic's history. So we're going to see how that goes. And with that, if we are ready, I'll dive right on into mainly New Orleans Voodoo, but a little bit of Haitian Voodoo in my history as well.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
Let's do this. All right, so we know that I don't speak French, but here's my...
Except like you always sound like the skis ball man, like checking women out in the corner.
Oh my God, here we go. La zele, bon temps, roulé.
Okay, that sounded a little less like horn dog creeper.
Like the...
Yeah. Yeah, a little less of that.
So for those of you who don't know what the hell I just said, you must not love New Orleans or NOLA the way I do, or you may not also know French like I do not as well.
Yeah, I don't know what you said.
I am strictly a English-Spanish speaker, so that's my bilingual capabilities. However, laissez le bon temps rouler translates to let the good times roll.
Woohoo!
In French, and it's basically the tagline for the amazing city that I have come to know and love, which is New Orleans.
I still need to go.
Yeah, you guys that's gotta be on
I
the
want to
list.
go before it's underwater. Which is
honestly
really
it's sad, but it's gonna be pretty soon. So get your booties there.
Which is really sad thought. But I was like listening to the Daily, and they were doing a whole story about cities that aren't going to survive, and they were talking about New Orleans, and I was like, I have to go, and that's really depressing.
Yeah. Well, so listen, we're trying not to be so dark.
Chestnuts roasting on the fire. With global warming coming soon.
Coming to heat up the waters.
God, we're bad.
And drown out New Orleans. Okay, that's really effing sad. New Orleans is where I had my bachelorette party in 2018. And later, my bestie was married there, self-care, in 2019. And she regularly travels to NOLA, as it's also lovingly called for short, with her hubby. Pretty sure that's where Rosie was conceived. They're 1-year-old. So, get it.
New Orleans. I gotta go.
Yeah, I thank both Kara and John, my bestie from home, for getting me into that city. That's the first time I visited.
How old were you?
Oh, God, I was older. I was 20-something, and they've been going for years and years and years, and they're like, you gotta go. And it was me, her, Kevin, and X. It was incredible. It was like literally the time of our lives on Bourbon Street. And
I want to go for the food, the music, the culture.
Everything about it. It's just, and the Caribbean air, it's like there's just this life that hums that I have come to love. And I use NOLA as my jump off point for voodoo because of the very, very intertwined and rich history of the two during the 1700s as an after effect of the term Afro Caribbean enslaved people's trade, which I will use instead of what was formerly called the slave trade. Afro Caribbean enslaved people's trade. So a little bit of a mouthful, but frankly, that's something I will be respectful of here and out.
I'll hold you to it.
Before I even get into voodoo or Louisiana voodoo, as we white Western folk know it and refer to it as, mainly from the media, I really need to define a little bit more about African diaspora religions. The term African diaspora religions refers to a variety of other related religions that arose in the Americas across the Caribbean, Latin America, and the southern U.S., including NOLA.
So it's like Christianity almost, but like different sects of it.
Kind of.
Like branches?
Kind of. But diaspora is more, it's like a term of people being spread across these various geographic places.
But they probably, in those different geographic regions, had different religions.
Correct.
Or modified religions.
Exactly.
That's what I was trying to say. Like Christianity, that kind of happened too.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that in a little bit. So this is actually a perfect segue really quick into the difference between Santería and Voodoo. This is obviously not a Santería episode, but I wanted to be clear here that they are often misconstrued as one and the same. They're in fact not. Santería is based in the Yoruba people. Voodoo is based in different tribes from Nigeria. Now, Santería is Spanish Catholicism, mostly in Spanish-speaking countries to this day, whereas Voodoo is, they were colonized by the French, therefore more French-related. Again, still have an extension of family and familiar, ancestors calling upon them in the spirits, but they are two different distinct religions of two different tribes of Africa. So I just wanted to point that out here really quick because they, while both again take their religions from Catholic roots in the syncretic system, they're different. And I don't want people to get it twisted that I'm trying to conflate them too. It's called syncretic religions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but exactly to your point, that's why there's so many different versions of quote-unquote voodoo. Yeah,
because I noticed that in my research, there's voodoo with 2 O's, and then there's the one with a U. So the one American New Orleans is with 2 O's, right?
Yep.
I almost had 2 zeros. 2 O's.
Zero. My bank account.
Yeah.
No, and then voodoo with an OU that you will be covering as Haitian voodoo.
Okay, cool.
So diaspora, again, refers to a variety of people that were basically enslaved people brought to the Caribbean, Latin America, and the southern United States, and even parts of South America. There are several diaspora religions, not just voodoo or Santería. I ignorantly thought that there was just one voodoo. I didn't realize there was, you were saying, all these different sects.
Well, I only knew that from researching for this episode. I didn't know that coming in.
Yeah, there's a brief list of countries across the African diaspora that practice different types of voodoo. You'll see it on our IG at Bewitched Banter. But Brazil, Cuba, Curacao, the Dominican Republic, Guyana, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, St. Lucia, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, the US, and Venezuela, to name a very few. There's way more, but obviously they correspond directly with the enslaved people's trade.
Okay.
So now that we know that there's a crap ton of African diaspora religions, not just voodoo and Santería, frankly, I'll have to be very honest. Like, I used to think before I was introduced to it through a very close person in my life, I always thought voodoo and Santería were the same thing.
Well, I didn't even know what Santería was until I met you.
Yeah.
Because I think you kept referring to it one time.
In this case, like I said, I'm covering Louisiana Voodoo, or also AKA New Orleans Voodoo, or Creole Voodoo.
That makes me hungry.
I know, I want some gumbo, even though I just ate your soup. Oh my God.
Yeah, I was like, just hearing that, I was like, I'm triggered. I want some food.
Oh my God, I love it. My favorite thing from New Orleans food-wise would be, I gotta say, po' boys or gumbo.
See, I've never had po' boys. I've had gumbo, which is good.
Many a po' boys on bourbon-fueled evenings.
Po' boy, it's fried shrimp, right?
No, it's a sandwich.
Well, and it's a sandwich, but it has
Oh yeah, like a bunch of fried buck and everything. It's so good. Oops, sorry, that was my first F-bomb, Robin. I'm proud of myself.
You lasted like 5 or maybe 5 minutes?
That's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
For me. Mm-hmm. So, thanks.
Maybe on like episode like 30 or 100, you might get like 15 minutes in.
Maybe. We'll get there.
We're probably stretching it.
I think we are. But to explain a little bit more about what voodoo is in general, and again, I'm really specifically covering New Orleans voodoo here, a sensationalized pop culture caricature of voodoo. And that is an Afro Caribbean religion that originated in Haiti, which I know you're going to bring us to next week in your story. Though followers can be found in Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and Brazil, the US, and elsewhere, it has very little to do with so-called voodoo dolls or zombies, as many of us think.
Yes. I remember in middle school, I had a friend, and this is so funny. She got mad at all of us. And she sent this is like childish junior high drama, but she like sent my friend over or she told one of my friends to grab some of my hair for her voodoo doll.
Oh. Do you know if she actually really practiced or she was just messing with you?
She was going around town asking people for people's hair, and I was on the top on the list. I don't know I did.
Yeah, what'd you do?
I don't know.
Oh, damn, girl. You in hot water.
I felt that pain in my side earlier. Was that her?
Your ass from working out. Could have been. Mm-hmm. Could have been. Maybe she was practicing charms that we'll get into. So no surprise, New Orleans voodoo came to the Americas, and specifically Louisiana, starting in the 18th century by way of African diaspora, where a majority of West Africans were taken from Bambara and the Congo to the then, at the time, the French colony, which is now Louisiana. Obviously, they had been reduced to literal property. I'm going to get, the emotions are coming, guys. Here it is. Here's your forewarning. They were reduced to property, or 1/5 a human being. It's so disgusting and inhumane to me that I can't even go there today. I've got a bunch of other stuff going on. But again, people came to New Orleans as enslaved Africans, and they were able to hold on to their old religions because the French, quote unquote, masters had so much control over their enslaved peoples. But because of that, the West African traditions merged very closely with Roman Catholicism that the French practiced. So this merging of West African religion and Catholicism is actually an example of a term that I mentioned earlier called syncretization. And its actual definition is, from Merriam-Webster, to attempt to unite and harmonize, especially without critical examination or logical unity, right? So you would not ever think that a voodoo doll will go in a Catholic church in any way, or any part of either religion combining. You're taking both religions and you're blending it to make one.
Okay, I get that. That's way more than the dictionary version just went over my head.
No problem. So
I was like, what?
In this case,
okay, cool.
In this case, enslaved people saw a way to hold on to their religious beliefs and traditions by distinguishing their gods, or orishas, or saints, because what they did was they would use the Catholic saints as a mask to represent their actual African.
So it's kind of like their code name.
More or less, yeah. But they still use the figurines to help protect themselves since they were given the freedom, quote unquote, to practice a religion at least. The very least, they held on to that. By the 19th century, though, in New Orleans, hundreds, if not thousands, of Haitians made their way to Louisiana fleeing from the Haitian Revolution. They brought with them their own form of Haitian Vodou, as I mentioned, spelled Vodou.
Okay.
This even further blended into what is now known as Louisiana Voodoo, spelled Voodoo.
The common spelling probably we all know. The majority of us know at least.
Yep.
At least that's what I knew.
Yep, exactly. So it very quickly made its way up the old Mississippi River. Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Oh, you did good. And so for all the way up the Mississippi to Missouri, as you call it. And while voodoo itself was never banned, it did have to be hush-hush, right? Because there was this gross back-ass alley rule or law that regulated when and where Black people could assemble. Still happens today in so many different subversive forms. Okay, we're gonna move right through that because I'm feeling it today. This topic gets me very 0 to 100. Classic Krista, 0 to 100. So let me calm myself down for a second. I personally believe that because voodoo has had to be learned and practiced on the DL, because of that, that's where it got its mystique and association with quote-unquote witchcraft and black magic.
Okay. I could definitely see the connection. Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, obviously a total theory on my behalf, but like I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, if it is secret, when anything is more secretive, it does give the illusion of like, ooh, what's going on?
Or taboo. I want to do it.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah.
I'm cool. I'm underground. Similar to like
hipster.
Music. Right. Is that what they go? Hipster. Exactly.
I remember the first time I was called a hipster in college.
You were?
Yeah, I didn't even know what it was. I was like, someone called me a hipster. I was like, oh, what is that? And they explained it to me. And at the time, it wasn't like it was becoming a mainstream term.
I can't see you as that, but okay.
I mean, probably because I was dressed cute, maybe.
Maybe.
They're hating. I don't know.
Hey. But again, I think to this day, it has a mystique surrounding it, and it intrigues so many of us, including myself. Throwback to our tarot episode, in your case, Miss Cleo was barred from using the term voodoo, if we recall. And she could not say the term in her ads or with her callers, which is valid terms for me to go on a whole nother rant about First Amendment and rights, but I ain't gonna do that right now.
But the Miss Cleo episode, it wasn't really her. She was playing a role, and it was like the role they wanted her to play. Not saying it was okay, but I'm just saying they wanted her to be a psychic.
Right, and they used the word psychic instead of voodoo because God forbid you use the word voodoo, it would scare off all their white collars.
That, and probably, do you think at that time people really knew much about voodoo? Because I think a lot of people are more likely to understand what psychic is over voodoo.
Right, intentionally so is my point, because people.
I'm agreeing with you.
Because like I'm just annoyed by the fact that it's a religion. Honestly, it is, and I'm just This topic again, I just get very heated. Okay. By the 20th century and moving right into the 1960s, Louisiana voodoo was a great source of tourism. So people were getting a little less scared of it and becoming more and more attracted to it.
When?
In the 1960s.
Okay.
And people were traveling there in search of a lot of tourist trapeze type stuff, frankly. And a quote-unquote revival took place, the practitioners of which would often draw heavily on other African diasporic religions, such as Haitian Vodou and Cuban Santería, during this time. And so they were drawn to experience some form of this quote-unquote black magic, no matter what it was. But back to Louisiana Voodoo's roots, it was actually portrayed on media not correctly, as we know. And for those who don't practice it or study it, Voodoo has no formal theology or text like the Bible, Torah, or Quran. It is mostly an oral tradition, which I love. I love that. And again, back to keeping it on the DL, that tracks with it being an orally passed down religion because these enslaved peoples couldn't talk about or rather have a scripted text about their beliefs because, they could fear their lives, frankly. And they weren't given the opportunity for an education or to be literate, a majority of them, and therefore there was no text.
Makes sense. Also, it kind of like makes me think of like when people say like, what is it the saying? It's like never write down something you don't want repeated or... I just learned that in 7th grade when I was passing notes.
Yeah,
I got in trouble.
And y'all on social media, your titties cannot be erased. It's always going to be out there. God knows what else y'all put out there. It can be found even if you delete it. Don't do it. Don't do it. PSA.
I am so glad I did not grow up with Snapchat.
Oh, God.
Instagram. I had Facebook in college, but I think I didn't have like TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. Oh my God, the things I would have put out there thinking I was being funny or cute.
Oh, same.
I would have been canceled.
Terrible. We both would have been canceled. I feel canceled and embarrassed and made fun of because the shit I did, it ain't cute.
I'm just glad I didn't have all that when I was 20. Thank God.
Thank God. Thank God.
So you were saying?
As I was saying, voodoo and many of the Afro Caribbean religions blend their traditions with today's practitioners who seem to have no problem with converging seemingly, like, again, contradictory Christian beliefs with their African roots. Many do practice both voodoo and Catholicism simultaneously. And in the case I'll be covering later this week, that person did just that. So, for example, today, a lot of practitioners of voodoo also combined it with Judaism, the Kabbalah, and or Hinduism. So not even just Catholicism. They kind of take bits and pieces and, again, create that DIY sense of religion as I covered in African witchcraft. So
it seems like
very
that's
similar.
On the rise. Like people now aren't as much following like a traditional religion. Seems like people are kind of taking bits and pieces, kind of like you covered in our first episode, like blending their own religion or their own beliefs. Because I even felt like that when I was talking to my friends. We were just chatting like briefly, and it seemed like my friends from the theme I've got from them, which is a small glimpse into the world. But they were saying they took like bits and pieces from different things they believed in. But I might be completely wrong because I am I don't know. That's my little version of the world. Because there's probably a lot of people who are very traditional and follow an organized religion. Exactly. And blending to them would be like,
normal.
No, not normal.
I see what you're saying. Because the ones that are on very strict.
They're very strict with their beliefs.
Yeah, so it's either really, really strict or it's like this blending happening today. And I'm definitely obviously leaning more towards the blend. In fact, though, back to voodoo, many rituals begin with practitioners reciting the Apostles' Creed, which is a very long prayer that I could not recite to you right now, and the Virgin Mary, or Hail Mary, also Catholic prayers that I did once have to study and recite.
Fun.
Oh, God. I can do Hail Mary on the spot now, Father, but Apostles' Creed. Voodoo rituals have 4 phases with their own distinct songs correlating to each phase. So the 4 phases are preparation, invocation, possession, and farewell. Each song and phase are meant to be portals to their gods or the deities and to bring those spirits back into their human bodies. So essentially, the songs are really just an invitation, I think, for the spirits to possess each person, but really more so their ancestors. To me, it's all about ancestry. Anyway, they use these possessions of spirits for healing and physical ailments or for even something like heartbreak.
Where they would sing the song for heartbreak, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, so any type of...
It's like a country song.
Yeah.
Like every country song.
Literally everyone written. The spirits conjured can either be saints, largely modeled, again, after the Catholic saints, or the spirits of the ancestors. In contrast to Haitian Vodou and Cuban Santería, Louisiana Voodoo actually relates all of its saints to the Roman Catholic Church saints. And Haitian Voodoo and Santería use their Catholic saints to equate with the deities. So what I'm trying to say is that Louisiana Voodoo invites the spirits in, and that's how they practice. Whereas the Catholic saints in Voodoo and Santería, Haitian Voodoo and Santería, are matched up with different Catholic saints. So either you're conjuring a Catholic saint or you're actually conjuring your family member.
Okay, so they're like praying, basically. Okay.
Exactly. So as Louisiana voodoo grew in the 21st century, it pays specific attention and homage to the elders. Hence, so many altars that you see with candles, lights, family heirlooms, pictures of saints, even skulls in Mexicana culture.
Yeah, it reminds me of Day of the Dead.
Exactly. So like in Coco, which is all about Day of the Dead, you know, it's all about ofrendas, which is an offer, which I have my own in my home of all my family members. So in any episode of, let's say, like CSI Miami or American Horror Story Coven, you can see all these types of altars. And unfortunately, media usually F's it up and like equates all of the voodoos and all of Santería as one religion, even though they're not the same as I discussed. But
so they're using saints that don't equate to the voodoo religion, which would equate to Santería, and then they're showing it as voodoo? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, essentially what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand.
No, I'm sorry.
And wrap my head around it because
it's a lot because it does look very similar. But then I read this beautiful book on who I'll be covering, a voodoo queen I'll be covering in my case. And then I got very interested in studying the two, and they are indeed from different tribes. So therefore different.
Okay,
practices.
so they're just using imagery basically to summarize it. That would be Santería. A common person, probably like me, wouldn't know the difference. But if you really follow the religion, you know.
Right.
And the media messes that up a lot.
Yeah, and here's one big difference. And speaking of like something I would be proud of and badass bitchery, because Madame Laveau, who I'll cover, is and was a badass. To that extent, Louisiana voodoo is seen as largely matriarchal by those who study it and those who practice it, which I absolutely love.
So it's unlike Christianity, because Christianity usually always has male.
Men.
Yes. It's like all male. I like that. Let's mix it up. Let's have some women in power.
So right. We're going to get into it a lot more in my case.
Yeah.
But this is a little bit of a quote about voodoo feminism.
Okay, awesome.
Which I know, and I feel like everybody around us in listening should know, like we are feminists, obviously. Quote, the feminist theorist Tara Green defined the term voodoo feminism to describe instances whereby African-American women drew upon both Louisiana voodoo and conjure to resist racial and gender oppression that they experienced, and editorializing here still do on a daily basis. Continuing the quote, Michelle Gordon believed that the fact that free women of color dominated voodoo in the 19th century represented a direct threat to the ideological foundations of quote-unquote white supremacy and patriarchy, end quote.
So she thinks, in summary, that the voodoo religion was giving like women the feeling of power, where they almost could like stand up to the men who were oppressing them.
Well, I don't know that they necessarily could stand up, right, because they were enslaved, but it gave them the agency to practice their own religion and their own shit. And in my story, again, I'll cover, Marie Laveau did gain her own agency, both spiritually and financially, because she was able to do this.
That's awesome.
Down with the patriarchy. In theory, voodoo is honoring, though, loved ones through altars, again, prayers, song, and dance.
Are you going to get into this? Do any of the, I don't know what you would call it, like branches of voodoo? Where does the doll come from? Are we going to discuss that?
I right on that. So
okay. I was like, we have to address that because that's what people want to hear.
Absolutely. So how and why did Louisiana voodoo and many of its Afro Caribbean religion counterparts get the rap for being, quote unquote, black magic or witchy or evil? Well, I think it is for a few reasons, because it does involve altars and animal sacrifice. Some sex of it do.
Yeah, I'll cover that in my case.
Spells, rituals, and charms, including the dolls or zombies, as you just asked. And again, it all had to be practiced underground. But here is a little bit more about the doll, which actually is a form of a charm. Charms are called gris-gris, or I don't know if I said that right. It's Gri. In Spanish, it's gris, which is the color gray, but this is gris-gris in French, I think. I don't know. And it's believed that gris-gris can be used to hurt someone or harm someone. Hurt or help someone, excuse me. You might immediately think, as you just said, voodoo doll. However, despite the name voodoo doll, it has no connection at all with Louisiana voodoo or Haitian voodoo. The voodoo doll actually came from fucking Europe, and yet they're gonna pin it on the black people, fucking course. I'm sorry, y'all. Tell them why you're mad today. The voodoo doll actually came from a European tradition called puppets, which is known in folklore and magic and witchcraft. It's a doll made to represent the person for which you're casting spells. And my theory is basically that, like, white people took this puppet of what they knew of it from Europe and then created the voodoo doll to then make it associated with enslaved peoples and quote-unquote black magic, so thereby not allowing it to be practiced and making it scary and taboo, and once again taking away something that was a religious freedom, one of the only freedoms that enslaved people had. Today, many practitioners have altars in their homes or outside on their front doors. They can have food, drinks, coin, money, candles, anything that one may want to offer in prayer and in honor of their deceased loved ones. The altar and offerings, though, are a way for those to communicate with those said ancestors. And in fact, again, as you know, I have several in my own home. It's sort of my blend of the little I was let in on from Santería and what I definitely know from Mexican heritage. So historic voodoo rituals also included snakes heavily, that I'll get into in my story. Marie Laveau, who is said to have been communicating with her serpent in all her ceremonies. The snake thing dies out later in the 19th century, but later, as an homage to Marie Laveau, the New Orleans Voodoo Spiritual Temple actually got its own live snake.
Oh,
in New
wow.
Orleans. I've never been.
Do you know what kind of snake?
I don't, but
Because
in the media that I've consumed, including the book that I will discuss in my story, it was a boa constrictor. Like, think Britney Spears.
Oh, okay.
I'm a slave for you vibe.
Like a huge, long,
big ass
snake.
constrictor.
Okay.
Yep.
My biology teacher in high school, he had, I believe, 2 20-foot albino snakes. And when we were taking our tests, he would take them out and let them slither around the ground.
Oh, no.
And the
How the F is that legal?
Because it's Mount Vernon. They're like small country high school.
God.
And then he would, first day of class, he threw a mouse in the cage and let us watch the snake like suffocate and kill the mouse as like his introduction. Like, hi, what was his name?
He was in biology?
Oh, he was a crazy teacher.
Oh my God, that's
awful. I remember one day I forgot my notes from my biology class, because we could take notes for a test, and I forgot it. And he kept on saying, Amy, life is a beach. Sometimes you get sand stuck between the toes. And he thought he was like hilarious dad joke. And I was like, I'm ready to kill you.
Yeah. Wait, but back to the snakes. How did you take your test? I wouldn't be able to. No.
I don't remember if I was even that phased.
Really?
Yeah, but we also had to dissect cats in that class. And he had cats.
Do they still do that?
I don't know, but they had cats in formaldehyde bags and their arms stretched out and their legs stretched. That's another thing he did. The first week he threw one of those cats around the class.
Oh, no.
He was like totally there for the shock factor.
Oh,
so your science class was not like this?
Not even close. It was so boring. I kind of wish I had that, even though I'm grossed out.
I think he was kind of, a lot of people hated him, but he was kind of fun at the same time.
Oh my God. The
super
snake thing,
super Christian, but yeah.
Oh.
He had and he was like kind of a country guy, big tip cowboy boots. Yeah. But anyway, that's back to your story. But I'm
so distracted by snakes roaming around with high schoolers. What? Okay, back to my charms in voodoo history. The voodoo doll would then be a form of gree-gree, but you can have any type of other charm that could be bringing harm. Let's say.
So it's kind of like them, like you said at the beginning. They blend different religions, so they took that from another religion and blended it into the voodoo religion. I'm being a good student right now.
You are. Very good listening, Amy. Miss Holt, excellent listening. Through voodoo, though, practitioners could place hexes or curses on someone by placing an item under the person's pillow or by drawing black crosses on the person's doorstep with salt or mixtures incorporating mustard, lizard bones, oil, and grave dust.
And what grave?
Grave dust.
Damn. It's probably
That's
really
intense.
dusty down there.
Yeah, really intense. I mean, you must really want to harm someone if you don't want to dig some grave dust up. But various shops called botanicas, which I'm gonna have someday.
Have what?
Botanicas sell these things. So they sell charms,
Oh,
rituals, crystals,
Yeah.
the shit that your guy was selling in Brazil, basically. Could be called.
You're going to own your own store?
Maybe.
Oh, God.
Botanica Krista. No, honestly, I don't even want that. I just want a sign that my aunt can hand make and put it on my altar. But anyway, there are various shops in New Orleans and around the country that you can purchase any of these materials, which where the fuck do you get grave dust from in mass? But that's another question.
Girl, you got to work for it. You got to go dig up that grave.
Dig that shit up.
Get your little duster out and get that dust into your pan. I got this from the grave.
I work for it. I really want you to suffer, man.
That's like some backbreaking work, too. So you must really
Wait, hold
hate
on. You
this
dug
person.
a grave before? You dug graves before?
Oh, yeah.
You got mine in the backyard waiting for me?
Yeah, we got a hole ready. When we've had enough, just roll you in.
I'm waiting for the day. As long as you give me Ella, that's fine. I just take her with me.
No, we would save the dog.
I know you would. But because it's such an underground religion, again, I think so many people fear it as much as people like me who love it and are so intrigued by it. Final note here to wrap up voodoo is that it became popular in movies and fiction, as I said. Quote, it bears little resemblance to the real Voudon, which is the original religion.
Voudon with an N.
Mm-hmm. Voudon. Beliefs or practices. Voodoo has become a prominent feature for New Orleans tourism, and with countless shops, tours, exhibits, museums. Of course, stripping sacred objects and rituals out of their original context for commercial exploitation is nothing new. End quote. In the end, it has a really undeserved reputation as a sinister religion. Though some Voudon and voodoo rituals involve animal sacrifices, it is hardly unique. Again, religious traditions like bloodletting, including Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and Hinduism, have all done that shit.
So it's all in the isms.
Mm-hmm. All the isms. The irony, though, is that Voudon's best known and most sensational features, including voodoo dolls and zombies, have absolutely little to do with its actual beliefs and practices. For example, the dolls and the zombies are not about hurting somebody. They're actually about calling in on your ancestors.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And calling on them to inhabit your spirit for advice.
And see, and my understanding, and I might be talking for other people, but I'm assuming a lot of people don't know a lot about the voodoo religion. I think most people thought the voodoo dolls were only for hurting and harming people, because that's the only thing I knew about it.
Yeah, and that's all they portray it as.
And I mean, to be honest, before we did this episode, my understanding of voodoo is very, very limited, because I've just never taken the time to really look into it. Or it's not something it's not mainstream enough that we talk about it. So probably mostly what I knew about it was the voodoo dolls.
Yeah, and that's basically what has been shown to us, growing up and still to this day as it's portrayed. But again, I'm so fascinated by this religion, and so much so, one of the many reasons I love New Orleans, but just again, who doesn't want to reach out to their loved ones for guidance?
I thought you said you didn't want to in our one episode.
So, do what?
I asked you if your grandma came to talk to you, and you said you wouldn't want to talk to her.
Okay, let me rephrase. I don't want to see her, but I will talk to her.
Okay, but that's even creepier, because then you might be questioning you have voices in your head.
I take a disembodied voice over... No, I wouldn't. What am I talking about?
Yeah, I feel like either one would be... Okay, if all of a sudden last night you were sleeping and then you woke up and you clearly heard Granny talking to you.
I mean, sleep paralysis is real. Well, that's a whole nother episode.
But first of all, you would think that. But then if it kept happening, what would you do?
I'd be like, yo, I'm trying to sleep, Grams.
No, but would you go to a doctor?
No. Because they wouldn't believe me.
But you wouldn't think maybe I'm losing my mind?
No, probably not.
But that makes me question you a little bit, that you wouldn't go to a doctor if you're hearing voices.
I mean, I'd ask my doctor's sister, but I don't...
She's an OBGYN, though. She doesn't study the brain.
True.
She knows badges.
Yeah, but
okay. When you ever start hearing voices, we're gonna have to see. We'll keep you tuned in to what Krista does. If she thinks it's
listen,
paranormal.
I don't have jingle bells in my vagina at least, so
but
there's that, and they're not Obama's babies. So
no, I'm just questioning when do you start to believe in paranormal rather than the logical? Something's happening.
I don't know. Maybe you'll have to experience it for yourself.
Well, I don't. If I did, I would be going to the doctor.
Yeah, you made that clear.
But it concerns me that people are walking around hearing voices, and if they're not going to the doctor.
Well, yeah, that's why there's a lot of homeless rows in Phoenix.
Shouldn't laugh about that.
No, we shouldn't, because that is actually sad. But my point being, I meditate daily, again, to convene with my own spirit, but also really to try to get, maybe not actually fucking communicate, right, with my family members, but just listen and see if there's any symbols or messages I can gain from that piece of quiet. And I do talk to them. Whether they hear me or not, I am talking to my family. And if it's a healing practice for me, I see no harm in that.
I'm not saying there's harm in that. I'm saying the harm is when people start to hear voices. But I'll move on.
No, I have not heard Abuela's voice, to answer your question. And no, I have never seen an apparition, thank God. That is what I cannot, no, I'm not strong enough for that shit. But anyway, that all said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Voodoo's really misguided and has this reputation that is so undeserved, as that quote said. And again, it's really just about convening with your fellows and your family members and asking them for help, right? I mean, if we're all lucky enough to have family members we can rely on, why the fuck not?
Some people are like, oh, I do not want to talk to my family members.
I get that. With that, if anyone wants to sponsor me and Amy's trip to NOLA,
I'm sure people are flocking to sponsor our trip
to New Orleans. Hit up our Patreon, Bewitched Banter. Thanks.
Nice try. Honestly, good job. I didn't know much about the voodoo religion. It was really interesting to actually learn the real belief system rather than the little tidbits I knew about voodoo dolls.
Yeah.
And I have to point out, I think you only said the word fuck maybe 3 times, so that is very impressive.
Thank you.
It's
You're welcome, Robin. Really appreciate it. I did it for you. And all the other mamas out there that might be mortified.
Including your mom.
She doesn't listen. Love you, Barb, but you don't listen. It's okay.
My mom either.
Oh, yeah. Tell everybody what Vicky said.
Oh, my mom, we were driving along the other day. It was so funny. We went out to dinner. And Corey, he was like, oh, my mom's been listening to the podcast. And my mom is ruthless, everyone. She immediately replies with, oh, does she actually like it?
Can you do it in her accent, though?
No, I'm terrible with accents.
Oh,
does she actually like it? She does not talk like that at all. Anyway, that's why I said no. But I was like, oh, I didn't even bother replying. But I was like, yep, that's my family, brutally honest. And I was just like, okay, you hated it, but whatever.
She took it really well. And I was just laughing. I thought that shit was funny. But anyway.
Yeah, but again, I don't really feel like you make a podcast for your mom.
No, absolutely not. So, but I did, knowing that you listen, Robin, I'm trying to keep it in check. So, unless the word F is absolutely needed for conveying my feelings, I'm going to try to stick to that.
We'll see how long this lasts.
It's going to be a long road, but we're going to do it. And that is a wrap on voodoo history. And stay tuned in a couple days for our stories.
Yes. So this week we're mixing it up because obviously it's our podcast. We can do what we want.
We can do what the F we want. Damn, I was going to
Anyway, but we're going to try it out and let us know what you think, because we are so open to, because it's podcasting, it's this weird thing where you spend all this time recording, editing, you put it out in the world, and then it's like crickets. You don't hear anything, and you're like, did people like it?
Echo chamber.
Yeah, but anyway, so if you do have feedback, let us know, email us, but we're going to try it out as a 2-part, because we've heard feedback that may be a shorter episode, but who knows, might be back to the long episode format.
Yeah, and again, feel free to email us at bewitchedbanter@gmail.com with any questions or comments. corrections.
And be kind.
Honest. Be kind, but be honest. And we just appreciate you guys. So find us on all of the socials, Instagram at Bewitched Banter, Facebook Bewitched Banter Podcast.
Yep. So anyway, we will be back with our stories, and my story, I'm pretty excited to tell you mine. And tune in on Thursday.
Bye, guys.
Peace. Be witches. Thanks for listening. Please rate and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram or bewitchedbanter.com. Suggestions for the show? Email us at bewitchedbanter@gmail.com. Credits, music, Phantom Fun by Jonathan Boyle from premiumbeat.com. Podcast edited and produced by Krista Hins and Amy Holt.